This conference will now be recorded.
Followed by the pound or to enable audio controls, please by the pound or hash sign. If you this conference will now be recorded.
I'll try it, please.
Can anyone on the call hear us now?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Sorry for the delay, folks. We had a few issues here. Again, welcome to the September 9th, 2021 edition of the Iowa 911 Communications Council. If we could We'll do a roll call since I'm closer to the mic. I'll rattle off the names here. Kara is here. Tracy Bearden.
Here.
Doris Griffin. Mike Bryant.
Here.
Mark Murphy.
Here.
Jeff Anderson.
Here.
Richard Pierce. Here. Rob Denner. Rob, we see you, so we'll call you here. Lawrence Hartpence. Jack D'Angelo. Here. Taylor Teeple. Steve Zimmer. Joe Sargent. And John McCormley. Okay, we do have a quorum. We'll forego the guest introductions. Could I please get a motion to approve today's agenda?
Chair, before we do that, is there any, I don't know if this is the appropriate place to ask, but is there any way we could add an information sharing section amongst the council members? Because I know that maybe others like myself, I represent Iowa NENA, and I know there's some information that's important to be reported out. And I think this is a good forum to do that. Is there any way we could add that onto the future agendas and the agenda today?
Certainly. Yeah, I will put that on the agenda going forward.
Thank you. And I'll move to approve the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
So moved. Mark Murphy.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Against, same sign. Motion passes. And likewise, could I get a motion to approve the August 12th, 2021 minutes?
Griffin.
Okay, do I have a second?
Pearson.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Again, same sign. Motion passes. Blake, do you have a report for us?
I do, thank you. The first topic is really a follow-up from last month. We were a little late in closing out the end of the fiscal year final financial report, so I do need to circle back and go over the expenditure report. Basically the same form that you're used to seeing. Total surcharge revenue was $7.9 million for the quarter. Total payments to the PSAPs represented $4.7 million. Because this was the end of the fiscal year, we also did the end of the year pass-through amounts, and that was really kind of the holdup. It was determining that amount. So for those that need a refresher, basically the end of the year, we take what's in the operating surplus, basically the surcharge that didn't get spent for network expenses, and we pass that equally through to the PSAPs. So there's a couple things that we keep back within the surplus. Basically any official encumbrances and obligations that we have to pay for network costs, as well as a 12.5% of total revenue, basically in a catastrophic reserve. If we had to replace a data center, spur of the
Did anybody else's audio cut out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted
Yes,
to
sir.
confirm.
Guys, hear us now?
Yes.
Yes.
Anybody on the conference line, can you hear us now?
Yes, we can hear you.
They just said yes.
Yes.
We could only hear Chris, and now it's quiet again.
So this is Blake again. Can those on the phone now hear me?
Yes. Yes.
All right, we're going to try to do this off of a speakerphone, which is probably going to be a disaster. But we'll keep going and keep working on the room audio. I was in the midst of sharing the quarterly expenditure report. I was about to the point where I was going to say the starting surplus for 2022 will be about 10 million. And again, that is the encumbrances that we have for various contracts that we have to pay, as well as the 12.5 catastrophic reserve. So next quarterly report, you'll see that $10 million number up here as basically the starting point for the quarter. Does anyone have any questions on the quarterly and end of year payment process? And I'll do my best to answer questions for everyone. Okay, not hearing any, we will get into the bulk of my report. We sent out an email yesterday, just as a reminder that language translation services are available through a master contract. That was nothing that the 911 program did specifically, but in our investigation of potential ways to help people out with language translation services, we found that Department of Administrative Services had a contract. It is a very friendly contract. It is very fiscally responsible. So if you are interested in that service, again, check your email. The email Allie sent out yesterday has more information, and we're happy to answer any questions. It's basically free to sign up, and then you pay basically as you use it, based on however many minutes you use. So again, check your email or ask us offline if you have any questions on that. Also check your email later today or tomorrow will be the annual forms email that goes out. Just a reminder, those are the expenditure collection form, which is due in January, the PSAP update form where you update your contact information or make sure that we have the correct contact information, and your 911 service board information. So all of those are due here January 1st with some caveats, but look for that email here shortly. Finally, on this slide, we did release the cost recovery study. If you remember, that stemmed from a letter that we sent out and worked with Iowa Communication Alliance on to really get a grasp of what the wireline costs are that PSAPs were paying. That kind of ties directly into the wireline migration project. When that legislation passed a number of years ago, it was under the assumption that those costs were going to go away from the PSAP. Some of those costs have, but others remain. And we wanted to figure out what was still required to pass wireline traffic, and what costs could be eliminated, what costs remained, to get a grasp on what that dollar amount was. There was no method to really calculate that total within the state. So we went through a process where PSAPs were supposed to get with their telcos, make sure all the infrastructure that was in place was still needed, see if anything could be eliminated, and submit copies of invoices to us so we could analyze, what those costs were statewide. And we came up with a cost of between 2.2, might be 2.4, and $2.7 million. And the net result is that on an annual basis, we cannot guarantee that we would be able to cover that cost. So that the report also goes into a number of different options to remedy this issue. It doesn't necessarily make one recommendation over another, but it kind of goes into a discussion of what potential options are. And I think it's a much bigger conversation than just us making a decision on the best course. Obviously, there's ramifications to PSAPs, there's ramifications to our department, there's ramifications to telcos. So I think as a community, we tried to present various options, and something most likely will have to get done legislatively. What that looks like is probably yet to be determined. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that cost recovery study if there are any. I will move on then. Update on the wireline migration itself. No particular update or change there. It's the same counties. GIS grant information. An additional 12 counties met the benchmarks for a total of $84,000 in August, bringing the total for the first couple months of the fiscal year to 26 counties and a total of $162,000 in grant funds. There are 2 training applications on the agenda today. As a reminder, there's a standing approval for the APCO and NENA conferences, up to $5,000 per conference per organization. So those conferences are in October, and the applications were received and sent out to the council members to look at and vote on later on in the agenda. Any questions for me before I turn it over to Zetron for shared services? All right, go ahead. Yeah, to the podium. Hold on. I'm going to take my phone.
Perfect. All right. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you in person. My name is Mike Hardy. I'm the regional sales manager for Zetron. Also in attendance today is Scott French, president, general manager, and Paul Moskowitz, VP of sales and distribution. So I'll just get to the summary real quick. So in the last few days, we've got Franklin County signed up August and live August 18th. Butte County is going live September 15th.
Dallas County's live sign on now. Mute that.
Oh. Franklin County. Updates. Franklin County, live August 18th. Butte County set to go live next week, September 15th. In the last month, we've had sign-ons with Hardin County, Wright County, and Orion County on the shared services program. Next slide, please. Indicates PSAP
evaluation phase of our shared services.
Sounds like the audio's not doing it. Unmute the phone, mute that. Yeah, mute the speaker, Blake.
Speaker, no mute. Okay, perfect, thank you. If you're interested in learning more about what's going on with Zetron in the state of Iowa, we do have a monthly newsletter that we send out. You're welcome to subscribe by sending Lynn Warren an email at the address posted there. And with that, that is all I have for you today. Any questions? What date do county needs to be activated? By what date do county needs to be activated? Okay. Thank you.
So there was a question in the chat about when do counties need to be activated, and this is probably just a good housekeeping thing. The Zetron contract currently is set to expire next summer. So obviously we'll have to do something, and I don't know at this point what that looks like from a procurement standpoint. I think we are interested in continuing the shared services program. Obviously we have to have a contract in place. So, you know, if you are interested in, you know, the way things are, I would suggest getting something going here shortly because that contract expires next summer. But obviously looking to continue the program, I just can't tell you anything about the procurement or vendor selection or any of that process at this point. It's a little bit early. So hopefully that answers that question. We also then have a special presentation, and I think this is going to be of interest to the 911 community. Chris and I, the SWIC and I, have been working on this, and it really kind of falls on both of our laps. The presentation you're going to hear is from Rob Dew with Cybersecurity and Information Infrastructure Security Agency, and it's really a project about CAD to CAD interoperability. And I say it ends between 911 and interop because it really is both. The 911 program in Iowa isn't necessarily tasked with anything CAD related, but it certainly is involved in the receipt and disposition of 911 calls. And because, you know, CAD to CAD interoperability literally has the word interoperability in it, it's also an interoperability board issue as well. So this presentation will actually be done both at the 911 council meeting as well as after this at the interop meeting. So you, again, just to socialize kind of this project, and hopefully it applies to a lot of the community and can move the state forward as far as CAD to CAD interoperability. So with that, Rob, if you are on the call, you can go ahead and I'll advance your slides as you go.
Okay, great. Yeah, this is Rob Dew. Can you guys hear me just to do an audio check?
Just a second. Is there a way to get this on the room audio, Chris? Just a second. We're going to try to project your audio so it's not just on my phone. Hey, Rob, can you go ahead and speak real quick?
Yeah, sure. You want me to go ahead and get started, or are you still waiting to
Yep,
see if you
now you can. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Good morning. I'd like to thank the council and Blake for giving us an opportunity to present this proposal. We'll try to get through it in about 10 minutes here. As Blake said, my name's Rob Dew. I'm a senior technologist in the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency in the Emergency Communications Division, primarily working in 5G network security, priority communications, communication interactions between the EZNet and the nationwide service providers. Supporting me on this is John Contestable. He's a director with Public Safety Solutions at Skyline Technology Solutions, and he's held many positions supporting public safety. He used to work at Johns Hopkins University. He was a SWIC for Maryland and has a lot of experience in video interoperability between organizations, which we know is going to be a big component of NG 911 media. So today we're going to go over quickly at a high level what the information sharing framework is, its status, its application to this project, and the different phases of this project we're proposing, and ultimately asking the council for a decision to go forward with the project. So as Blake's showing up here, this is a project background of the information security framework. So one of the things we've heard for public safety for years is that real-time situational awareness for public safety relies on making data interoperable and enabling information sharing across platforms. And it's a requirement that, a lot of this has been solved within organizations, but trying to move that to other organizations and other disciplines, especially during a large event, the problem spans technical and traditional organizational boundaries. We'll talk about in a moment about conceptually what the ISF looks like in the concept of 3 layers, which John Contestable will go into, but it's trying to create a structure to show how public safety can map their data to this framework as necessary to build the IT connections to share data. And the overarching goal of the ISF is to inform and guide the transition of operational capabilities to a common data exchange approach to allow an interoperable ecosystem. So about almost 2 years ago, with SAFECOM and the National Council of Statewide Interoperability Coordinators, we formed a task force, and the task force was comprised of IT and operational subject matters from public safety agencies, no vendors, was all really stakeholders, law enforcement, fire, EMS. We had participation from urban, suburban, and rural areas, and people with expertise in technical operations, governance, and policy. And 4 of the pillars of the ISF address interoperability, security and credentialing, resiliency, and data management. Now, right now, the information sharing framework is a document that should be published on the CISA SAFECOM website here in a couple weeks. It's going through some tech editing right now. And what we're trying to do with this task force is to move from a document to look at developing with industry and implementing an information sharing platform as potentially a service and a set of tools. And part of this effort is really leveraging focus groups and operational vetting with stakeholders to go into a technical proof of concept, because we want to develop functional performance and operational requirements to determine if industry can develop and implement an information sharing platform. And we've had a lot of discussions with major platform providers, wireless service providers, cloud providers, and so forth. And some of the benefits of the information sharing framework is it really aggregates and tries to create a structured approach for operational sharing of information between public safety entities, and trying to identify the most critical public safety services and best practices. And to also give a roadmap of actions that public safety can take to have the most optimum impact of solving interoperability issues, gaps, via governance, acquisition guidance, alignment with priority services, training, and potentially grants alignment. And it also really tries to highlight at a state level, the need for emergency communications interoperability across multiple networks and functions like land mobile radio, broadband, NG 911, CAD, record management services, and alerts and warning. So right now where we are, again, with the ISF is working with a lot of focus groups. We see this proposal as mutually beneficial to us in Iowa to feed into this technical proof of concept to look at delivering this capability to stakeholders. Next slide, please.
And I'm going to hand off to John Contestable because this has kind of been his concept for years that he's been pushing in the public safety environment and our focus on the integration layer. So John, would you like to say a few words about this slide?
Sure. Thank you, Rob. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, thank you for the time to share with you today. The interoperability framework, really, Rob mentioned it just a few moments ago. It's a structured approach for sharing information. We know as we move into broadband networks that sharing data is going to become very essential to maintaining situational awareness, and the PSAPs are going to be in the middle of that information sharing environment. So this concept is, we like to call it the three-layered cake. If someone's shuffling their papers, could we settle that down, please? There we go. So the three-layer approach assumes that you have a data layer at the bottom, if you can see in the graphic, an integration layer in the middle, and a presentation layer at the top. And if you will, imagine the data layer houses all the different data systems that a PSAP needs to interact with. That could be different video systems. It could be CAD systems, as we've been discussing. But every PSAP typically has their own systems, and those systems aren't necessarily interoperable with other systems. And then in the presentation layer, imagine that to be where you need to get the information. That's the end user in the field. It's the officer that's responding to the call, or the firefighter, or whomever. And they're typically going to get it over their mobile data terminal, perhaps on a smartphone or a FirstNet device. And so the idea is, how do you get the information from where it lives in the data layer to the individual who needs it in the presentation layer? Well, we've learned from experience that you can connect systems up at the data layer onesie twosie. You know, neighboring jurisdictions connect CAD systems so they can do joint dispatch. But we've also learned that doesn't really scale from a statewide perspective, and it's not necessarily the most efficient or elegant way of going about that. So the three-layer concept is essentially that you're going to have to invest in an integration layer that sits in the middle, that does the translation between those proprietary systems in the data layer and hands off to end users in the presentation layer. And so that's the idea here. As Rob mentioned, we're working with a group in Houston, and that is focused primarily on making video systems interoperable. And the idea is that in Iowa, we'd like to work with you to see about making CAD systems interoperable by developing the architecture and the connections necessary in the integration layer in order to be able to see and move data around more easily. So that's the high-level description of what the three-layer framework is. If there's no questions, maybe we could move to the next slide. Great, thank you. So what we're saying here is, why is this information sharing framework so important? Well, as I said, soon you'll be able to exchange photos and video and text messages. That's all part of a Next Generation 911. And we're moving in that direction by putting in place the EZNets that are necessary to move that data around. But what that will do is it will provide a lot more information to PSAPs, and we want to make sure that they're positioned to consume and share that information efficiently. So we know that data will be coming into the PSAP. We know that we need to have the ability to receive it and then manipulate it in some fashion and then push it out to the responding public safety entities. We also need to know that, you know, policies and budgets need to be reviewed to look at this capability and the staffing. But our focus right now with the three-layer approach is to look at the technological wiring. How do you need to architect these systems so that you have the flexibility to do what you need to do? Our idea is that working with Blake and Chris Myers, the SWIC in the state, that we'd like to do a project, kind of a proof of concept, to look at CAD interoperability and an example of applying the three-layer architecture to this problem. So next slide, I think I'll throw it back to Rob.
Yeah, thanks, John. Can everyone still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, so what we wanted to do was take a kind of success-based approach on this and do a phased approach for the project. In phase one will really be about really looking at kind of what the as-is situation in Iowa with the fiber connecting all the PSAPs. What are the current plans for NG911? We know you guys are doing voice and texting, and you're looking at obviously other media. And so it's really kind of like an inventory and assessment of, through interviewing a lot of the stakeholders that are working with the CAD systems and dealing with NG911, working with Blake and Chris, and looking at also a lot of the technical issues around like what sort of technical and functional requirements to achieve CAD to CAD interoperability. I'll look at the different vendors in terms of moving the NG911 media around. What are some of the bandwidth constraints, if any? What are the disparate data sets? And what's really the technological challenge right now, trying to move this NG911 data around the PSAPs and in and out of these CAD systems. Phase two is really about taking that information, and then also I should say we also want to look at what are the current and planned use of telecommunications and transport systems, including the connection to the EZNet and how that's sized and what that looks like, and then also any other transport besides microwave that may be in use, like MPLS, whether the fibers, a wide WDM, where it's Ethernet and IP, if there's any, TDM still in the network anywhere. And then basically taking that information in phase two, looking at a focus group and taking that information and what the requirements are for moving NG911 media in and out of CAD systems and interoperability, and interviewing the stakeholders and going through the information sharing framework and customizing it for this specific use case. As John mentioned, we'd already done a user focus group in Houston. We went through the NIPSTIC use case and their IoT working group of a school shooting, focusing on situational awareness video in GIS. The thing that's very attractive about Iowa is the fact that you have a lot of the people in place, you have these councils, you've got a lot of the technology with the fiber ring connecting PSAPs, and you're looking at NG911, and you're also, this focus group will allow us to focus on NG911 media like text, video, data, pictures, as well as CAD to CAD data. So what will come out of that is a customization of the information sharing framework specifically for this use case. Now, I want to say that phases one and phases two, we have funding for. We're looking at it probably taking about 6 months. Assuming phase one and phase two are successful, then we would do phase three, which would basically involve refining those use cases, looking potentially at integration testing, and actually developing and doing a pilot for a common information exchange and technical proof of concept that demonstrates moving this NG911 media and CAD data between PSAPs and then document the full ISF process. And I'll get into a little bit of ties in phase three to some other things that we're doing on the next slide. So next slide, please. So the next steps, obviously, we're doing this presentation. We'd like to get the council's approval and also ask, and we can work through Chris Mayers and Blake about the specific contacts and the key stakeholders we need to be talking to execute phases one and phase two. We want to make it clear that we're doing the heavy lifting here. There's no financial burden. There's no big resource burden on Iowa stakeholders. We will handle all the logistics, and we will try to minimize the time required interacting with the stakeholders. And finally, I wanted to touch on some of the mutual benefits of this and why we think this is such a great project benefiting public safety at large, our ISF initiative, and the stakeholders in Iowa, is that coming out of this, we will have a customized information sharing framework for the information exchange of CAD data and NG911 content within the Iowa ECC, EOC, PSAP ecosystem to complement the existing voice and texting. And all of that will be documented and provided in reports back to the council. The real good benefit for us, as I said earlier, is that we're looking at doing a technical proof of concept to deliver a platform, whether that takes the role of maybe services as part of wireless priority service, working with FirstNet. There's a lot of different options. What tools could be available? To do that, we really need to engage operationally with focus groups. And so this will help us with the functional performance and operational requirements that would have to go into that technical proof of concept. The other thing is that one of my big jobs, my day jobs, is doing wireless priority service and the GETS government emergency telecommunications service with over 20 wireless and wireline providers around the country. Right now we have priority voice and control signaling on LTE. We're looking at doing priority data, video, and information services and 5G. What this will be of a lot of value is it will give us a very good insight into what's the type of CAD data that's most important, what types of NG911 media is being sent, and that will help us in negotiations with the carriers for preemption, QoS, and how to prioritize this data for that interconnection between the EZNet and the wireless broadband providers. It also ties into some of the projects we're looking at about developing an artificial intelligence engine and machine learning on the other side of the EZNet to try to do some real-time filtering of all this NG911 media, because once this goes, it's going to be a deluge of information hitting the PSAPs. And that probably needs to be filtered and sorted through, and a real-time analysis and data analytics run on it. And finally, I'm also involved in a working group with industry, vendors, NENA, and government. And that's really looking at there's been a lot of NENA work on standardizing interconnecting emergency services on IP networks into public safety broadband networks, and also looking at EIDO conveyance, emergency incident data object conveyance, within the NENA subscription use case. And so there's a lot of synergies we see here that's going to help a lot of adjacent projects. And I think we're running over time, and I know there's other people on the agenda, so I'll cut it short here, turn it back over to the council chair, and if there's any questions we can address now, or if you want to follow up with questions, I think my contact information's on the slide deck. And thank you for the opportunity to present this. Hopefully I haven't been talking into mute the whole time. Can people hear me?
Yep, I can hear you, Rob.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll leave it up to the council chair, if we want to address questions or move to the next item, and we can follow up with answers to those questions at a later date.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Access code followed.
Can you guys hear me? They're working on getting the audio back up in the meeting here.
We can hear you now.
Would you entertain a motion?
Yeah, I'm in the room here. They're just working on getting the mic up front working.
Code followed by the pound or hash sign. The answer is invalid. You entered 164. To enable audio, please, audio of this conference will now be recorded.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
This is Blake again. So, just to reiterate, at this point, what is being asked is really a no financial relationship with CISA, where they would, on a pilot basis, work with PSAPs and kind of get the ball rolling on a CAD-to-CAD information exchange. So I know I saw Rob Denner's support. It's up to the chair. There's not a formal agenda item. I don't know that we need a formal motion. I think a general head nod of agreement would be good, but that's the chair's decision.
Yeah, since I don't have it as an actionable item, I wouldn't be looking for a motion, but like Blake said, just an acknowledgement that it's something that we want to look into, certainly.
I think one question that I had still, Rob, how many PSAPs or communities are you looking at as part of this? Do you have any idea?
Sorry, Blake, did you ask me a question? It was a little garbled on the audio.
It was mostly, how many PSAPs are you looking at for this pilot?
So I think it's going to depend on phase one. I think what we would be looking at in terms of PSAPs is if there's different configurations among them, different CAD vendors, different transport connectivity. So I would want to look at a PSAP that meets each one of those individual configurations. So I don't know how many PSAPs are in Iowa, but I would imagine like looking at six or like half a dozen of them would probably be enough. But I think it's going to that would really be one of the questions we wanted to work with you on in talking to the PSAP subject matter experts is how many different flavors do we have out there in terms of configuration, size, and type of transport connectivity.
John, this is Tracy Beer, and I have a question for you. Are you guys, I didn't quite understand, are you guys going to create your own kind of interface for this CAD to CAD? Are you using a vendor out there like Central Squares CAD to CAD? I'm just kind of curious, and if PSAPs already pursue a CAD to CAD option within their PSAPs, would they still be able to be included in this information sharing down the road?
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, so the information sharing framework, we try to stay right above kind of the vendor and application. So we don't want to say, use this specific vendor. It's more really about the capability of almost creating like an API gateway in the cloud to allow sharing between disparate data. Obviously, you can turn into this problem like boiling the ocean with lots of different CAD systems, but the goal would really be to set like an API gateway in the cloud that could take the CAD systems, and even if they might be having data in slightly different formats, interop the data between them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Are there any other questions for Rob on that? If not, is there a general head nod of acceptance that we want to proceed? There is in the room. All right. Thank you, everyone. With that,
thank you.
My presentation is over. Sorry for all the technical issues. It sounds like there was a lot going on. There was an IT issue, a fiber cut. So apologies for that. Thanks for everyone that's staying with us, and I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to training fund requests. We have a $5,000 request from AFCO for the fall conference, as well as a $4,000 request from NINA, also for the fall conference. Do I have any folks that want to speak on that training? Tracy Bearden, maybe?
Is this for the? Yep, I can answer any NINA questions if they have any specific. I do have the training. I just think it's a very good training information to put out there because it's critical that the information that people provide and obtain is uniform, and to prevent instances that happen, such as with Denise Amber Lee, to prevent those bad outcomes from happening. I know we can't prevent everything, but if we can have that unified training and information collecting, it's going to be helpful. And so I think that's where they're coming from, of wanting this information shared, and so people can establish a better program and training practices and look at those best practices out there that were developed based on things that have happened that were not as good outcomes.
Okay, thank you. From the council members, do I have any questions related to the APCO or NINA requests?
Sarah McClure popped up and she said, what are the topics? So if we could go over what I guess we're doing here.
So I'll just kind of read from the application, just for APCO's application. This course will be created to expose 911 operators to various methods of communication techniques, the officer's mindset versus the dispatcher mindset, cognitive processes, along with how work life can invade home life. For NINA, it is through the Denise Amber Lee Foundation, and it is best practices of a successful center training officer is training the adult learner.
Any other further questions about those requests? Okay. Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve? We'll just put them together. Do I have a motion to approve both the APCO request for 5,000 and the NINA request for 4,000? Do I have a motion?
Since I am representing Iowa NINA, I'm going to abstain from the Iowa NINA.
This is Mark. I'm going to have to abstain from the APCO since I'm vice president of APCO.
Okay, so I'm going to break them up then. Do I have a motion to approve the APCO $5,000 request?
So moved, Bearden.
Okay, do I have a second?
Anderson.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Against, same sign. Then do I have a motion to approve the $4,000 request for the NINA training?
Anderson will move.
Do I have a second? Okay, any discussion? All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Against, same sign. And the motion carries. Okay, do we have any technical advisories today?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a couple of items I'd like to share with the council.
Okay, you might have to come down to the mic.
Okay.
We're on the overhead right now. Are we?
Okay, in regard to some updates to transition to 10-digit dialing for the 988 suicide hotline that's come out from the revised milestones here from the North American Numbering Plan Administrator. There's several milestones here in this handout. I'll just briefly go through them, but today is the first one. The NANPA will send out a final round, second round of special letters to 911 state county coordinators and PSAPs. Then we drop down to September 24th. There's several milestones for September 24th. This first one is voluntary requirement. Carriers may update social media and external websites with information on the 82 NPAs that will transition to 10-digit dialing for the 515 and 319 area codes. The next milestone, September 24th, carriers must send second customer notice by September 24th, 2021, and then send confirmation to the NANPA. Again, the next milestone for September 24th, mandatory requirement, carriers must be sending 10 digits of the called party for all calls terminating in end offices and access tandems in the area code by September 24th, 2021. Next milestone, again, September 24th, 911 providers will send reminder notice to PSAPs, PS Alley, and county coordinators of upcoming mandatory 10-digit dialing effective date, July 15, 2022. The next milestone is October 15. NPA will distribute carrier contact lists to carriers so they can contact each other as needed to troubleshoot any 10-digit dialing issues. On the next page, October 19th, next milestone, the NPA, FCC, and carriers will issue a second press release regarding mandatory 10-digit dialing. October 24th, 2021, end of permissive dialing and start mandatory 10-digit dialing. I won't go through the rest here, but I just wanted to give you an update from the National American Number Plan Administrator, so that's kind of good information to have on hand. The other item I have is in regard to robocalling. Again, some more statistics with STIR/SHAKEN, which is the FCC's initiative for the telcos to combat robocalls and spamming. Americans received an estimated 5.74 billion spam phone calls in July of 2021. This is a 3% decrease from June, according to the report. However, spam text volume increased to 7.1 billion spam text for July, which is a 15% increase from June. Spam text volume is likely to continue to increase as spammers look for ways around the STIR/SHAKEN robocall technology from the telcos. The RoboKiller report about the decline in robocalls also found that scammers try to take advantage of the following items here. Wildfires on the West Coast by making scam insurance robocalls, which increased 25% in July. States with the highest number of spam calls in order: Texas, California, Florida, Ohio, and New York. Most common types of spam calls in order, again, are with vehicle warranty. I'm sure everybody's had those calls. Health insurance and other insurance. Most spam texted states, again, in order, were Texas, New York, California, Florida, and Ohio. So from a telco perspective, what's ironic is the FCC has regulations that the telcos combat the robocalls with STIR/SHAKEN software, upgrading or replacing their voice switching equipment at hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yet we're circumvented by, as we take care of those issues, and it seems to be working to some extent where we're catching bad actors originating calls. But as we work on the voice side, what do the spammers do? They go to texting and bypass what we're doing already. So it's a never-ending issue. So just wanted to share that today. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other technical advisories? Okay, moving on then. Can I get an update from ISIX by Chris Myers?
Yeah, I'll just do it right here, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind. Can anybody hear me okay on the overhead microphones?
Yeah, we can hear you, Chris.
Awesome, thank you. Again, I want to thank everybody for their patience today. Fiber cuts are never easy to deal with, especially when you're not exactly sure where the fiber cut is. But the nice thing about what we have here is that there's plenty of backup. So, as they say, semper gumby.
Want to thank Sheriff Chad Leonard and Terry McClenahan in Dallas County again for letting us host the meeting here. They've been very gracious guests, and as we've seen today, they're very technically flexible, so that's also a benefit. Quick update for you today on the ISSIX network itself. Routine preventative maintenance is still ongoing across the network. I would encourage everyone to check their email to see if they're getting an email from Scott Richardson. He's been sending out notices for maintenance in areas across the state. We're working on maintenance and kind of an updating of that mailing list for each area, and we want to make sure we have the most current contact information for everybody. So if you are a key point of contact within your agency and you have not seen an email from Scott, please reach out and let us know, and we'll get you on that list to make sure that information gets out there. In addition to that, if we do have to take a site offline for maintenance, that will be posted on the site status tab and status board. Again, you'll have to sort that to see the individual updates. You just got to click on the current administration notes tab twice to sort by status. On the topic of status board, we're still working on updates with that in conjunction with Minnesota. They recently began deploying their updates in Minnesota. This is important for us because once they're confident that that build is stable, we'll finalize the MOA and get that source code from them so we can add our own updates, and we'll have that same thing here. A quick update on some of the TA requests we have with CISA. Our TICP and Iowa FOG meeting is scheduled for the end of September at DPS headquarters. If you have any interest in that, please let me know. The West SDR deployment in Clinton is still ongoing, and we consider that to be steady state. Once Clinton is finished with their recovery efforts and rebuilding their communications infrastructure, the West SDR will be demoed and available for future deployments once again. As far as training goes for ISSIX, we're still working on some of the logistics for the other regions. As you may imagine, there's been some things in the news recently that are making us be very cautious and cognitive of what's currently going on out there when it comes to in-person sessions and meetings. We are still offering one-on-one PSAP and agency-based training for the interoperability talk groups and status board. We can do this in person and virtually, so we're as flexible with the agencies as we need to be. Let us know if you want any of these sessions in your locale. There's no cost for any of this training. Kind of getting towards the end here, ISSIX applications that were approved last month include Genesis Ambulance Service at level 1, Mercy Iowa City Safety and Security at level 2, Dickinson County at level 3. And the applications that are up for today include Cherokee Regional Medical Center for level 2, Poweshiek County Emergency Management at level 1, Webster City Police Department at level 3, and then Westcom level 4. That'll be an update to what they currently have, and then Dubuque County 911 an update for level 1 access as well. Standards and policy updates. We're still working on some common adjudication with ISSIX Standard 1.4.0, which is our pursuit standard. And then I have no new FirstNet sites to report being lit up over the last month. As you may imagine, with what I said previously in my report, when it comes to in-person meetings, we're evaluating this on a month-by-month basis based on the current landscape. That's my report for the day, Mr. Chair. Back to you for any questions. Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions? All right, hearing none, thank you. Moving on, get an update from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. We have a new representative, Jim Stromberg. Jim, can you hear me?
I can. Good morning. It seems appropriate that this morning I should start my remarks by doing an audio check. How do you copy?
We copy you just fine. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to start just by introducing myself, and I'm an emergency communications coordinator for the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, and I'm going to be supporting Iowa temporarily until Jim Lundsted's replacement can be hired. As you all probably know, your coordinator, Jim Lundstedt, is retiring very soon. He's taking some well-earned vacation right now, and I think his last day officially on the clock will be sometime in the next month. I live in Minneapolis, and I am the primary emergency communications coordinator in Region 5 to Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois. In addition to picking up Iowa temporarily, I'll also be picking up Missouri. A little bit of my background is I was previously Minnesota's statewide interoperability coordinator and the program manager for Minnesota's statewide LMR system that's known as ARMOR. I've had the opportunity to work with Swick-Meyer and a few others from Iowa over my time as SWIC, and it's always been an enjoyable experience. My background is law enforcement. I served as a suburban Minneapolis police officer in my first career, and my second career is really in this emergency communications world, and I'm enjoying that a great deal. I have a few remarks, and at the end I'm going to share my contact information, my email and my phone number. So if you want to have a pen and paper ready at the end, if you want to take down my information, I'll present that at the end. So I'm excited to work with each of you and getting to know each of you. Jim Lundstedt left some enormous shoes to be filled. All of the emergency communication coordinators in CISA operate a little bit differently. So I suspect there's going to be a little bit different pace and a little bit different MO by me compared to Jim, but I will commit to Iowa that I'm going to give the same level of support, and I probably will never fill those enormous shoes, but I'll give it my best effort. So I have a lot of catching up to do. I'm really anxious to learn more about where the Iowa PSAP community is on several different areas, areas that I think are important. I'm curious to learn and support on how Iowa is doing on its SCIP goals related to 911 and PSAPs. I want to learn more about the PSAP's continuity of operation plans and the maturity level there. Security and cybersecurity posture, and I call those out separately because sometimes we need to just focus on the basic things like locking the doors. But certainly cybersecurity, that's in our name at CISA, and that is a priority, and you'll hear me talk about cybersecurity a great deal. One of the products that CISA offers at no cost to PSAPs, and I have no idea if Iowa has adopted at all, is something that we call our ransomware poster, where we're willing to print posters for each PSAP that give some basic awareness about cybersecurity principles and what to do in the event of a 2 a.m. cyber attack. And I'm also curious to learn more about telecommunicator communications unit training, such as incident communication center manager and incident tactical dispatcher, and how well that is matured and deployed in the state of Iowa. So while I find my way, please let me know how I can assist you. I'm going to transition just for a moment here on a few things on what's happening at CISA. The emergency communication coordinators, excuse me, if you weren't aware, are going to be transitioning to a different division within CISA. We're going to go from the Emergency Communications Division to something called the Integrated Operations Division, or IOD. There's been, of course, a lot of fretting about that. I, for one, am optimistic about the transition, and I think Iowa should be too. I think emergency communications found a terrific home in a terrific neighborhood with cybersecurity and infrastructure security and critical infrastructure as its next door neighbors. I think that there's a lot of opportunities for partnerships and synergies, and we're always talking about not operating in silos. And I think this move to IOD, while there probably will be some challenges with it, I think overall it's going to be good for everybody. More specifically, from the headquarters front, wanted to just share with you that on September 8th, CISA published a document called Responding to Drone Calls, Guidance for Emergency Communication Centers. And this is a document that's on our website that provides options for telecommunicators when fielding calls from the public about drone events. And its goal is to give law enforcement a comprehensive and accurate information when responding to these types of calls. Also on August 30th, CISA added single-factor authentication to its published list of bad practices. As you all probably know, the best practice is the multi-factor authentication when you're logging into anything cyber. And multi-factor authentication is something you know, something you have, or something you are. For example, a PIN and a smart card and or a fingerprint. And you probably have systems out there that are still single-factor authentication. So it's our recommendation that you do what you can to move to multi-factor authentication. And next, on September 2nd, CISA released a new CISA Insights document entitled Risk Considerations for Managed Service Providers. And CISA recognizes the cost and operational efficiencies with outsourcing some of your IT. And this document offers guidance on how to manage third-party risks that come with outsourcing, and it includes a checklist of risk considerations for decision makers, operators, and technicians. And finally, on August 25th, CISA released a fact sheet detailing the importance of government entities migrating to the .gov domain. All of these documents are available on the CISA.gov website, and you can also contact me to get a copy of those, to be pointed to the website. And also, if you're interested in getting on a distribution list that I push out about 1, maybe 2 emails a day with important emergency communications documents and resources. So here, as I wrap up, I'll give you my contact information. First, I'll start with my phone number, 202-731-6350, 202-731-6350. And my email is my name, james.stromberg, S-T-R-O-M as in Mary, B as in boy, E-R-G, at cisa.dhs.gov, james.stromberg at cisa.dhs.gov. And if you didn't get that, Chris Myers has my information as well. There's a lot of great things happening in the Iowa emergency communications community. I'm thrilled for the opportunity to be part of it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, I don't hear anybody. Thank you very much. And welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Do we have any Chapter 34A Administrative Code Committee updates?
No, Chair, we don't. And I was talking to Blake about this, that perhaps we need to kind of circle this one out for a little bit, because the work groups that the state has provided are working really well, and there's still opportunities to join, and then maybe bring it back if there is a need for the specific Chapter 34A group to take on some of that lift and discuss and work with the state and provide recommendations to the council. So right now we don't have anything. We haven't been given anything for a while, but that's up to you as the chair.
Okay, we can kind of maybe put it on the back burner for a little while. Like you say, if it comes up where we need to do something, well, we can regenerate it again, certainly.
Thank you.
And then likewise, do we have any updates for baseline knowledge for 911 Communications Professionals Committee? Okay, not hearing any legislative issues. And then Tracy, you had mentioned earlier that you were interested in putting something in the agenda for sharing, council members sharing information. I think this would be a good place to put that in the future. But for now, Tracy, do you have anything you wish to share?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to alert individuals that October 11th, 2021, the APCO will be on the 12th, but the October 11th is the Iowa NENA conference at the Holiday Inn downtown Des Moines. And if you go to their website, you can sign up for both the APCO and the NENA. And again, the 11th for NENA and the 12th for the APCO conference.
Okay, very good. I don't have any unfinished business or new business or travel requests. Do we have any business from the floor for anyone in the room here? Okay, hearing none, do I have anybody online that has any issues they wish to raise? Okay, not hearing any. It's been a bumpy road today. Thank you for sticking with us, for those that did. And thank you to Dallas County for giving us this place to have our meeting. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Your speaker. Okay, do I have a second?
We'll give it to Tracy.
Okay, I'll give it to Tracy. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Aye.
we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.